Trump's blockade is already in effect, and he says the ceasefire with Iran is holding well.
I would say it's holding well. Their army is destroyed. Their entire navy is underwater. You know that 158 ships have disappeared. Their navy is finished. Most of their mine layers are gone. We have a lot of people, as you know. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the blockade will go into effect. It will be at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working to prevent Iran from selling oil, and this will be very effective.
Four-star General Jack Keane joins us now. General, what advantage does the blockade give us?
It is significant. I mean, what we're doing, obviously, is seizing all the oil that Iran is exporting to other countries on different flagged ships. Therefore, no amount of oil for export will come from Iran. And that's already in effect as we speak. This has a dramatic impact on them for sure. I mean, coming out of the distribution point on Kharg Island, that represents more than 90% of their oil distribution, and none of that is going to get through. So, what happened here is that Iran really gained leverage by closing the Strait of Hormuz. We went for a ceasefire. They wanted to stop the war, and President Trump assessed that. And I think the timing was extraordinary. You know, negotiations fall apart, and I kind of think, Stuart, I think the Iranians miscalculated. I think they put too much trust in what they achieved. With the Strait of Hormuz, I don't want to minimize what they achieved by closing it. They did that, but they thought it would have a bigger impact on the mindset of the president and our negotiators. I think they went in there thinking we would give in easily, out of desperation, but that's definitely not the case, not at all. Even, the president said publicly, and certainly the negotiators, he told them privately that he wants everything. And I'm convinced they called him back to get detailed feedback on the proposal. He said, no way, there aren't any concessions they want. Unfortunately, we didn't get everything we wanted, so there's no final agreement. And while we're on the subject of negotiations, Garibaf was constantly leaving to talk to someone important. I believe that this person is very possibly Ahmad Vahid, the leader of the IRGC, and although I'm not completely sure, he's not the one in command. We killed the first and the second, but this one is a hardliner. If that's the case, the Revolutionary Guard controls Iran. For sure, right? But this is a big push. We took everything from the Iranians, and we'll see. Look at Iran. The thing about war is that it's fundamentally a test of wills, and your opponent always has options here. And I think we just forced a mistake and got the ball back. Yes, that's where we are now. Okay, but the Iranians have options. They can create a stalemate and make us sweat by saying that oil and the economy matter more to them, forcing the Americans to back down. Secondly, they can test this, sending their oil tankers there and seeing what we will do. I know what to do. Our Marines will board it and park it. That's what we're going to do. They might take some kinetic action, Stuart.
Yes, sorry, I want to focus on this because Senator Mark Warner says that the U.S. would need thousands of ground troops if we want to seize Iran's uranium. Listen to this again.
This government knows literally days after the start of this war of choice, and we need to keep reminding ourselves of that. Getting rid of this enriched uranium means dealing with very volatile 1,000-pound cylinders. It wouldn't be a simple operation. It would take 10,000 soldiers on the ground guarding the perimeter. We would have to send in special operators, and the Iranians could then bomb the facility itself, potentially trapping our troops, and that volatile uranium would be very, very dangerous.
Is he right that it would take 10,000 soldiers, and according to Thea, would the president do that? Well, I'm glad he has nothing to do with planning military operations. I respect his political skills, but he doesn't know much about military operations right now, does he? Yeah, that's pretty reckless behavior to put 10,000 soldiers on the ground so the Iranians can just shoot at those 10,000 at will. First, to secure an area, you wouldn't need that many soldiers, given that we control the airspace, right? So we're not worried about a ground attack. If we stay on the ground for some time, and I'm not saying it's not a complex operation, the threat won't come from other ground forces. We can handle that because we have all the air power up there. They would be right there, you know? There would be drones and rockets and missiles. That would be the threat. And how do we deal with all of that? But listen, if we're going to carry out an operation like this, the CENTCOM commander, Admiral Bradley, and the SOCOM commander, who would provide the forces, wouldn't make a recommendation to the president unless they believed that the risk is acceptable in terms of the mission we're trying to accomplish and the risk to our troops. I don't deny risk to the troops. Yes, I'm not saying there wouldn't be casualties. There could be. Combat always carries a risk of casualties. But listen, so you understand, Stuart, there are other ways to achieve this. One way would be to take control of Kharg Island, or even threaten to take control of it, saying, hand it over, give up the nuclear enrichment program voluntarily, or we will take all your oil, more than 90% of it. Or we will keep it, or we will destroy it. Yes, one thing or the other. Okay, so that's another point of leverage we have. I wouldn't risk any troops. See? The Iranians must choose whether or not they will comply. It's always great to talk to you, General. You know what you're talking about. Thank you very much, General Jack Keane. See you soon.
With attention on Iran, the focus is also on Lebanon, where Israel and Hezbollah, backed by the Iranians, continue exchanging attacks. You can see here the consequences of the Israeli attack on Sunday. Hezbollah is still launching rockets right now against northern Israel. This weekend, Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel Katz visited southern Lebanon to see the troops facing Hezbollah. The IDF claims that they have already eliminated more than 100 operatives from the group in a single area. Netanyahu added the following.
Our enemies, Iran and the axis of evil, came to destroy us, and now they are simply fighting for their survival. We see this on all fronts. This is an extraordinary achievement by the State of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces, both by the regular soldiers and our wonderful reservists. The people of Israel salute you.
Israel and Lebanon are preparing for direct negotiations in Washington this week, aiming for the disarmament of Hezbollah and lasting peace between the two countries. Hey Trey, do you think Israel will suffer if they try to close the Red Sea, like they threatened to do if we continue with the blockade? What are we going to do in about an hour? Absolutely. We're talking about Bab el-Mandeb, an area where the Iranians could use their proxies, the Houthis in Yemen, to block international maritime shipping. They threaten to do that if their ports in the Strait of Hormuz are blocked. We've seen the Houthis get directly involved in this conflict before. A major concern is that Iran might actually use the Houthis to attack ships in the Red Sea with missiles or drones, which would be very dangerous. All of this is happening in a scenario where the United States has complete control not only of the sea, but also of Iran's airspace. In the last 40 days, the United States and Israel have decimated the Iranian Navy. That's why they have few options to respond to this blockade by the United States Navy near the Strait of Hormuz in just 2 hours. But there are major questions about how and where the Iranians will respond.
Realistically, Trey, will there be a regime change? Because when you look at the map, Iran is territorially huge. And I don't know how many of their military or regime members we've managed to eliminate, but what are the chances?
That's a great question. And look, the focus of the United States and the Trump administration is not regime change. We've heard from President Trump's Secretary Pete Hegseth, as well as from the top of Central Command and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The United States is not seeking regime change, but I spoke with regional and intelligence sources here in Israel who say that if the pressure on Iran's economy continues, it could put more internal pressure on what's left of this regime. And that's why the focus of threats from the United States and Israel has been on Iran's energy infrastructure, understanding that this is one of the critical pieces of the Iranian economy. If this is targeted and the Iranians don't negotiate over their nuclear program and the Strait of Hormuz, it would put even more pressure on the regime. It doesn't necessarily mean a regime change. That's a distant goal, especially for Israel and the United States. But when we look at the situation on the ground, the Iranian regime and its IRGC forces throughout the country still control the main cities of Iran.
Trey, what is Pakistan's position? I know they're the host country for this. And it's clear that the Iranians once again came to the talks with unworkable proposals. So Pakistan encouraged them to come back to the negotiating table. Yeah, it's hard to do that with people like this. So they're going to support us if we go back to, as the president says, bombing with all we've got.
Reports indicate that mediators are trying to bring the parties together to resolve two crucial points: Iran's uranium enrichment and the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump's goal is simple: to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. The president launched Operation Epic Fury with a lot of important information. Previously, his special envoy Steve Witkoff and Kushner went to the negotiating table in good faith. But the Iranians told the delegation that they already have highly enriched uranium to create 11 nuclear bombs. There are critics of the government saying there was no reason for the operation, but the president was reviewing intelligence information that the Iranians were about to create a nuclear weapon. And about the enriched uranium, we're talking about material with 60% purity. That's just a step. With 90% purity, that material is weapons grade. If the Iranians keep the uranium and the facilities that store and produce more enriched uranium, they'll be closer to a nuclear weapon. The president was clear. That's a red line for Zewarbai. The Iranians will either give up their enriched uranium or it will be taken from them.
Yes, and remember, regarding the JCPOA, if people thought we were pretending it was a big deal, it would have evaporated. It existed, but it expired after 10 years. They could have done whatever enrichment they wanted, and from 3%, they would easily reach 60%, as we saw. Trey, thank you. Thank you.